Moderator, is everyone, have they returned?
Yes, I see everybody is back in.
I don't need to do a roll call or anything. We can just move forward, right? So we'll move to agenda item 6. And I will defer to Ms. Yamaguchi, who will provide the updates.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Welcome back, everybody. Given that we had a fairly good conversation with the budget folks on fund condition and the updates in terms of COVID-19 and BVNPT were covered in my written report, let me pause here if there are any other questions or desire to on those two topics, and if not, I'll move into the third item. Wonderful.
I see no raised hands.
Oh, no, Ms. Norton just raised her hand.
Ms. Norton?
Yes, I just have a question. So I think for item 6 for the EO report, I made a note here that the minutes have changed in the link to recording. So are there I think it's problematic. I understand that the things have changed and it's very cumbersome for the actual minutes to be distributed, but it is a lot to ask everyone to review the entire meeting. I think that's what I wanted to say about your report, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Norton. Let's just move then to the board committee's item. As you know, we lost 3 board members rather quickly together, and so we do have some vacancies in our committees, and we also never made an assignment to Ms. Rubalcava. So at this point in time, item 1, first order of business, would be to please ask the board members to please consider requesting assignment to any of the committee vacancies. I would respectfully ask you not to ask to be reassigned from your current assignment to something else. But you know, all things considered, if you have some interest in one of the other areas, I would be very, very happy to help you out here. I think operationally speaking, if you could return to me the questionnaire with your requested changes or additions rather, and then we would do some processing, and I would provide this to the president and vice president for our next executive committee meeting and make the appointments there. Just as a footnote though, I would ask the board members to think about this a bit, because our next opportunity, I believe, to change committee assignments would come after the next board elections in February. So I think find something that you want to settle into and work with for a while. But like I said, I believe if we could have the board members do that, I would really appreciate that. And I think we would be able to then have all the committees meet. We unfortunately weren't able to have licensing evaluations or enforcement meet between the last board meeting and now. The other aspect I wanted to mention to the board members, pardon me, was that at the Education Practice Committee meeting, there was some questions and uncertainty, I think, of what the committee's complete jurisdiction was, what the actual responsibilities entailed. So we did attach the overall committee structure with the objectives, the jurisdiction, with the goals and the performance measurements. So I would ask the board to again review those, and we would place each of the this item on each of the committee's agendas the next time they meet, so that the committee can refresh themselves with that. And if there are any, I don't know, issues, changes, concerns with any of the committee assignments and roles, rather, their jurisdictions. That would be a good place to start that conversation. And it would be, again, probably something that we could move forward, discuss again at the November meeting, and with an eye towards adopting a new document in February. Madam Chair?
Thank you. Are there any additional? I see Donna Norton has her hand up.
Yes, I remember why I wrote that down in my notes. So I think I understand about the recording of the meetings that are held under Bagley Clean. Like some of our committees have recordings that you can watch, but unless I'm mistaken, some don't. So specifically, I don't think that there is I looked for a recording of the Legislative and Regulations Committee because there were a couple of things that will be coming up shortly, I'm sure, so that I could review what was discussed in that committee, but there isn't a recording that I'm aware of unless I missed it, and there's very little notes in the meeting minutes about what actually took place. So would there be an opportunity to have more inclusive meeting minutes of discussions for those committees that do not have a recording for, I guess, is my question.
If I may, Madam Chair. Ms. Norton, actually, we do record at all the meetings, but it was our oversight really to not upload the Legs and Regs Committee's recording. I do apologize. But henceforth, we will make sure that all of them are up.
Okay, so you do record them even though they're not open?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So I didn't miss it. It wasn't there.
Moderator, are there any public comments? I see someone with their hand up, but I wonder if it's stuck.
This is the moderator. That is Kobe. I believe his hand is stuck. I don't think he's able to lower the raise hand section.
Okay, and you don't see any other public comments?
No, there's no other further public comments.
Okay. Seeing no other hands up and no further comments, I would like to move on to item 8A, the Legislative and Regulations Committee report. Mr. Durking, would you please provide this report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As was noted, the committee met on Wednesday, July 8th. It was a teleconference. Staff and legal counsel were also in attendance. And as Ms. Norton pointed out, the committee minutes are attached as one of the items in the board meeting packet. Most recent movement of bills of interest to the board were discussed by Ms. Yamaguchi. At this time, we would defer to Ms. Yamaguchi to provide the overview of the most current legislative activity of interest to the board as noted in items 1 and 2. And I'll be able to respond to any inquiries or we'll defer to staff. Ms. Yamaguchi?
Thank you, Mr. Deerking. First of all, AB 2028 by Ms. Aguirre-Curry with regard to state agencies and posting of meeting information. That bill is currently in the Senate Appropriation Suspense file, and they should be moving on that. If it moves out of suspense, it should be within the next week or two. At this point, we have been having a lot of conversations about this bill. It's not scheduled really to change much from here, but the more recent, the June and July changes have addressed some of our problems, but not all. And at this point, I think it's probably fair to say that we would see some initial impact and some financial impact as well. But our long-term impact should not be overwhelming, I don't think. And if I could, I would pause here for any questions from the board. Great. Wonderful. Then to move on, then the sunset legislation update, as the board will recall, we didn't go through sunset review, but there were two pieces of legislation that was introduced and are of great interest. One, the original bill that was going to contain our sunset legislation, AB 2854, that was amended all the way through the assembly, and it was limited to only carrying the default delegation language that the board had discussed and approved last year. At this point in time, that bill has not yet been heard in its second house, which leads me to think that it's not going to be moving this year. And as it's not really carrying anything that would change our life in the next few months, that's not as bothersome. The other bill, SB 1474, that has been moved to the assembly floor. This bill is a large technical update bill, makes a lot of clarifications for a lot of boards, but relevant to us, it delays our sunset for 1 year and allows us and the other boards that were to be heard today this year not to sunset at the deadline of this year and to carry forward so that we can be heard next spring. As I said, that one's moved to the assembly floor. It didn't change much in the assembly, which means that it should be probably moving quickly, if not actually on consent. I pause for any questions on that. Great. As a footnote, it's our custom and practice to provide a tracking grid, if you will, for all the bills that the board has of interest, and they've usually been, it's usually quite a long list. Because we're close to the end of session, we decided that it would be more effective for us to wait until the governor's sign and veto deadline and produce a final tracking list and submit that to the board under separate cover, just as an update. So we'll look forward to seeing that probably early October. Mr. Chair?
Thank you very much. So are there any questions regarding AB 2028, SB 1474, the sunset extension or the default delegation?
So I haven't had a chance to review the details of it. So SB 1474 sunset extension, is there anything specific to the BVNPT in that?
Well, yes, Ms. Turner, it specifically lists us and the other, I believe, 5 other boards that were supposed to sunset this year. And so it essentially just extends our sunset, and it extends the appointment authority for the executive officer through the governor's office to be postponed with that year.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to, the second part. So that's been extended as well. Second part.
Yes.
Other than that, Ms. Turner, there is nothing more specific to the BVNPT other than those 2 items. But it's a relative omnibus bill.
And I'll read it.
Impacts a number of other regulatory boards. Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we go to this item relating to the fee increase. There is a recommendation coming out of the committee and possible action. And we hope you had a chance to review the fee increase memorandum submitted by the executive officer. During the Wednesday, July 8th committee meeting, the Leg Committee moved to recommend that the board authorize staff to initiate the regulations process for the applicant, licensee, and continuing education program provider fee increases If you have any questions, if you could just please formulate them regarding the documents titled List of Fee Changes, Proposed Fee Language, and the memorandum itself. We did hear from the budget folks at DCA this morning. So I hope that kind of fleshed out or at least the beginning for our conversation. So if there are any questions.
This is the moderator. We do have one public comment from Kobe Piazzi. With permission, I can unmute his mic.
Yes, please.
Kobe, your mic is unmuted.
Thank you. Once again, this is Kobe Pizzati with the California Association of Psychiatric Technicians. We represent over half of the psych tech licenses licensed by your board. And we have to strongly object to even asking for rulemaking authority for an increase in license fees until such time as the schools have a fee in place on their application process and regulatory oversight. It's completely unfair to balance your books on the backs of the licensees while we continue to subsidize the man hours it takes for the schools to go through this application process. You just heard hours and hours and hours of schools and the NECs going through the process it takes to get them accredited and licensed. This is simply unacceptable that the licensees are going to be asked to pay more while the schools continue to pay nothing. That is unfair. We started this journey a long time ago to require fees on the application process for schools. The BVNPT should first focus its attention on creating fees on the schools before they even think about increasing licensing fees on their licensees. The private institutions will be able to pay for the new fees on their schools with the tuition of one student. Why should the licensee continue to subsidize their profits? We strongly object to any movement in this direction of increasing fees on licensees without first creating a fee process for schools. We've been working on this for probably the last decade and trying to get legislation, but it appears that the schools have gone to the committees of the Business and Profession Committee in the Senate and the Assembly, and have really lobbied hard against trying to get any sort of fees for them to contribute their part on getting regulated. Well, there's a cost to regulating. There's a cost to accrediting, and it's the man hours. Why should the licensees continually have to subsidize all of their mistakes, all their poor performance? Why should we have to do that? I cannot begin to tell you how disappointed I am if you will move down this process or move down this road without first creating a fee for schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzati. Would staff care to respond to any portion of his comments?
Yes, this is Carol Mountain, and I will respond to a couple of things Mr. Pizzati said. One is you mentioned that the private schools could pay for it with a tuition of one student, and that's true, but you still have several community colleges that provide psychiatric technician and vocational nursing programs. And this is one of the things that has been discussed when they've talked about instituting a fee. It would be very difficult for community colleges who charge students very little to go through our programs. We are subsidized by the chancellor's office. but anybody who works for community college knows that our budget is not rich. And so I know that that has been brought up to the board, and they have respectfully been looking at that and trying to come up with a good solution for all of this. The other thing is, I just wondered if you were a psych tech, because if you are, then you know that having a school and being able to go to school and having the quality of programs that we have in California really makes a huge difference. So although you might feel like your fees are completely subsidizing the schools, the fees do go for other things that support the licensees, but without the schools, there wouldn't be any licensees. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are there any questions from any board members?
This is Donna. I do have my hand up, but it's not being recognized, so I'll just jump in. All along this journey, ever since I've been on this board, we've been tackling the issue of solvency and funds. Some things are out of our control, and some things and some things we have a little bit of control over. It was my hope and my understanding that prior to a proposed fee increase for our licensees, because our licensees pay quite a bit already, that we were going to seek legislation to enact school fees, because they do require a large portion of our NAC's time, and they're not charged for it. And then all these schools that go on provisionals, I mean, that's all, I mean, we've been down this road before. So while I understand the need for the board to remain in the green, and while I understand that without some type of fee increase, we will go into the red, it was not my understanding that we were giving up on the legislation or regulatory language or whatever it was that we had to do to enact school fees, and that we were going to try that first. So if someone can speak to that, because I do recall at a previous board meeting speaking out against raising the fees on our licensees, because they already pay, it's already a hefty fee every 2 years. And while I agree with Dr. Mountain that the licensee fees do go to more than just schools, but we can't just keep, it seems like our expenses keep going up, our budget keeps going down, and we can't just keep asking our licensees to foot this bill. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Norton. Would staff care to?
I have my hand up.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming here or appearing here today to represent your association and voicing your concerns and their concerns as well. I know that we are working on charging a school a reasonable rate. I'm hoping everybody's fees and costs will be reasonable. I think that we voted on it at least a couple of times, and it's my understanding it's working its way through the process, which, as you know, will require a legislator to carry it and a legislator to support it and a vote of the legislature. So be assured we're working on that, and we're trying to keep our licensees' costs down as little as possible. There are caps set by law as to the maximum amount that can be charged on licensees, and it's my understanding we're below that. The proposed increase on applicant fees would still be below that, but you're right, there should be some sort of reasonable sharing cost here. I just wanted to express that.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Any other board member have any comments?
Can we get an update about where we are with the school fees? Because I, like Ms. Turner, thought we were going through the legislative process, and then I think I heard something that process had stopped, and if it has stopped, can someone explain why? And if it hasn't stopped, can you just set my mind at ease, please?
And Ms. Melissa Rubalcaba has a comment. Ms. Rubalcaba has her hand up as well.
Thank you so much, Carol. Yes. I just wanted to note that as a psych tech and having, to pay those fees, at one time we were paying, I think, $300, and now we kind of got it to where it was the same as the LVNs. And just seeing it go back up so quickly is just kind of disappointing. And I just hope that we could find something else that we can do to kind of alleviate some budget issues. Yeah.
This is the moderator. We do have another comment from Kobe Yahtzee. I will unmute his mic with from board president.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Kobe Pizzotti. I just want to thank you for giving me a second opportunity to speak on this. I've tried to carry legislation in the past on increasing the board fees, and I've worked with Mr. Durking on this before, as well as other board members prior. And one thing that we do have the opportunity to do, which I wish would have been explored, was to approach the union to introduce legislation. We have greater relationships with legislators, and I'm pretty certain we could have got a author for the bill for fees. Also, I'd like to say that in terms of the community college, that's a valid point. We totally get community colleges, and we believe that community colleges should not have to pay a fee for this. I understand they do have certain drains on the system in terms of getting accredited. We get that, but they're also there to provide a vital service to the state as a whole in terms of the community college system. So we totally understand that. We would be willing to say that they should be able to apply for a waiver. Furthermore, the issue has been going on for so long of trying to get schools to, pay for a fee for the number of man hours that it takes to get them accredited and regulated. I just can't see how it is possible that you wouldn't approach that first and make sure you take every necessary step to get the fees on the schools in place before you think about increasing any sort of fee or seeking authority to increase a fee on a licensee. Now, I believe it was AB 179 was the bill that merged the two funds. That was something that I lobbied for, and helped pass, which allowed for the two funds to merge and allowed for the BVNPT to, make one solid licensing fee. And at that time, that was the time for the BVNPT to analyze and determine what would make us solvent. How would we continue to go on being solvent? And what was the right amount of money to charge licensees? And as psych techs, as Ms. Rubalcaba said, we were paying $300 every 2 years, while the LVNs were paying $150. So we just came to an area where we found that happy medium, or at least we thought we did. Now you're saying to all the licensees, nope, that happy medium was wrong. We need to move it back up. Well, okay, if you need to move it back up, what have you done to the schools in terms of getting them to pay their fair share in order to make sure that, not only are the licensees paying for their regulation and their, and consumer protection for the consumers, but also that the schools you're holding the schools accountable for their payment and their, cost on the BVNPT's resources. So anyway, I just thank you so much for letting me make that second comment. I really want you to know how important these issues are to us, and that these fees really make a difference to our members that, really don't have all the money in the world to be doing this. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Pizzotti. And yes, we have worked together in the past. I just want to raise a point. The school fee issue does continue to be a matter for discussion and great interest. And as board member Ms. Turner noted, since the school fees are currently not a matter of statute or regulations, it would require a legislative sponsor to move. And so with that, I'd like to defer to our executive officer for any follow-up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and everyone. Just a very, very quick history. As the board will recall, we have asked them to approve language and approve to authorize the staff to seek authors and to move forward. As just like I said, as very, very briefly, in 2018, we had initially planned to carry the school fee legislation at the same time as the increase in the range for the applicants and licensees, the continuing ed, and all the other other smaller fees that the board does charge. The Senate BNP chief consultant at that time asked us specifically to cut that part out and engage in significant community and stakeholder outreach, and we agreed that that was appropriate, and the staff worked intensively for the remainder of 2018 to hold town halls and directors forums and a variety of other things. We never got to the point where, of course, schools are excited about the idea of a fee, but I believe we were at that point, very much at the point where schools acknowledged that a fee was absolutely appropriate, and that it was really the number that was under discussion. Now, remember, of course, that I only took over this board's executive officership in the beginning of 2018. There's been a whole lot of cleanup to do on a whole lot of fronts, but this is, of course, a great priority. In 2019, we did again ask the board to approve draft language and to allow us to go find an author and move that forward. And we met with a great deal of resistance at the Capitol, and at that point, we did discuss it, and toward the end of 2019, when we were continuing to have discussions in the building, again, the Assembly and the Senate BNP said, and well, I'm going to paraphrase here, that it was the opinion of the chairs and the members that this conversation was most appropriate to carry forward in the context of sunset. And so as we were in the process at that point of drafting our sunset report, it does feature very heavily in that report, as well as a variety of other issues. And so it had been our plan and our hope that when we had a sunset bill move forward, it would either contain or have a sibling bill move forward with that fee mechanism. I think the board will recall that there is draft language that has been approved that we have shared with the Assembly and Senate BNP staff a number of times. Now, of course, that brings us to 2020, and as you all know, we didn't manage to get to a sunset hearing or bill, and that, of course, was a problem. We continue to have conversations with folks in the Capitol, but again, that coupled with the fact that the governor's office did say very clearly that no new fees were to be considered or requested. The few boards that did go forward with some fee legislation were very, very actively in a deficit and needed the help right now. And again, so we were not considered to be moved forward in any legislation like that. And so again, so we find ourselves here again, that absolutely it is a highest priority to ensure that we do obtain legislation to authorize the school fees. The staff has worked on a number of different scenarios, which you've all seen, laying out a different kinds of fee structures, very interesting ones, and some not so practical, but some that we think should bring in approximately, I think the last numbers I saw were between 1.5 and 1.7 million dollars a year. Like I said, it is absolutely the board's priority. It is absolutely my personal priority to get that legislation through. It is just a sorry fact that the nature of our fund condition, the nature of our fiduciary responsibility is such that we must, I believe, start the regulatory process to authorize the changes in the applicant and licensee fees. Now, the number we set forward in this proposal is that outside high number, which we hope to ratchet down based on the authorization of the school fees and other economies and other work we have yet to do in the coming year. Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Yamaguchi. I completely agree. And I don't think we need to be alarmist here because we all heard the presentation by the neutral budget analyst from DCA this morning. But if there are no other questions, we do have a motion out of the committee.
What is is this motion on the entire agenda item for a rulemaking update? Or is this motion just on school pass or on the school fees?
It relates to school fees, those that are contained in the chart in the package, the board package, CE program provider fee increases for site techs. Those fee increases.
Okay, so this.
I'm sorry.
So this motion is only for the fee increases.
That's correct.
Okay. And can someone restate the motion?
The motion is the LegReg that the board authorized initiate the regulations process for the applicant, licensee, CE program provider fee increases for vocational nurses and psychiatric technicians up to the amounts detailed in the documents titled Proposed Fee Change Language and Simple List of Fee Changes. That is our motion. Madam Chair.
Is there, Mr. Swanson, do we need a second on that motion?
That is the motion that came out of committee, so it is ready for discussion.
So I see no hands up in the board. Are there questions of the board? And it looks like we have a comment from the public.
This is the moderator. I believe Kobe has lowered his hand. I don't believe we have any further comments from the public. I don't see any.
I don't see any comments. Mr. Swenson, do I need a second on that or can we call for the vote?
You do not need a second, but I would ask just to be totally clear that you call for public comment again.
Okay, I am reopening this for public comment, and I'm asking the moderator if she sees any comments. Oh, it looks like somebody does have their hand up.
This is the moderator. Kobe's raised his hand. I will unmute his mic.
Thank you.
Kobe,
Thank
your
you
mic
once
is
again.
unmuted.
Yeah, thank you once again. This is Kobe Pizzati, and I do appreciate everybody's comments on this, and I understand where the board is. I understand what the governor said. If you're not, and I appreciate the executive officer's comments as well. If you're not currently in the red and you're seeing the progression towards the red, but you're not currently there yet, I guess my comment would be, why don't you seek out the legislation first to, increase fee or actually create fees on schools? That would be my hope and my belief is before you increase, your fees on your licensees or seek the approval process. I understand that it could take a long time for that to happen, but right now you're not there. You're not at a point in which you need to increase licensing fees on your students or on your licensees. So why not seek this approval process for legislation and let me help you. Let me help you get there. And that's what I would truly ask, that you vote no on this right now, as to the approval for regulatory language, or to seek regulatory language to increase fees on the backs of all the licensees. It's just an unfair proposition right now without having a fee created for schools first. So thank you.
Is there any other comments from the board? And thank you for those comments, Mr. Colby. I see that Elaine has her hand raised. Ms. Yamaguchi?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Just to reiterate, the rulemaking process is a long one. We believe that it is essential to start this process now, so that by the time we are approaching that deficit, we're able to move more swiftly. But also, I do want to underscore this one serious point, and that's that the levels we have been discussing for the school fees, especially if we start looking more into possible waivers and the like, that's not going to cover the whole amount that the board will need by 2023. There almost certainly will need to be some action, some increase on the applicant and licensee fees, but the disposition of the school fees, and plus whatever economies we can make and other changes in the board that we can countenance, that will determine what the final number should be. And as I said, because the rulemaking process is so lengthy, we felt that it would be better to get the authority from the board now to start that process. The board will continue to see language that, of course, will go out for public comment. There's 2 phases of public comment. I think we will have ample opportunity to adjust those projections. But as I said, the need is to start the process because it is a lengthy one.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. I think we are ready to call for a roll call vote.
Dr. Mountain, I had my hand raised.
I'm sorry, Paul, I don't see it on there. Go ahead. I apologize. I just don't see it.
Don't worry. I want to comment to with regards to what has been said, and I just I really want to encourage the public comment. I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, but it's really important for us as the board members to be working with right? Because we are going to be, we need to get these license fees and we need to get the school fees. And we need to start with the and in mind, but we can't start one without the other. And the reason is because I've been on this board for 3.5 years and we've been working on this for 3.5 years. And since the very beginning, since I can remember, we have been working on both things, moving them forward. Now, the licensees fees are moving, it seems like a little faster now or have moved ahead. And it is imperative for us to be working from the frame of and we need to continue to work in the and we will continue working in the school. And then that's something that everybody on this board is committed, because we've been talking about this for 3.5 years, as long as I've been on here. And I really appreciate the knowledge you have given us with regards to assisting and moving this policy forward. And I encourage our lead committee and our EO to please reach that hand and work with the different stakeholders who have a stake at this. And if we can get this school fee further along, that would be amazing. So I just wanted to say we need to continue working in the frame of and we need to do this instead of we can't do this without doing this other thing, because it's just really, really difficult. And I just wanted to say that because I truly believe we have been working with and the licensing fees, and we're working on the school fee. And we love that we heard that you're willing to reach across the aisle and support this, because we need all the support that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula, for those comments. That was excellent. Now, are we ready to take a vote? So we'll just start right back with Ms. Amazola de Herrera.
Sorry, the motion, can someone repeat the motion, please?
Could Mr. Durking please repeat the motion?
Yeah, certainly. The Ledge Reg Committee moves that the board authorize staff to initiate the regulations process for the applicant, licensee, CE program provider fee increases for vocational nurses and psychiatric technicians up to the amounts detailed in the documents titled Proposed Fee Change Language and Simple List of Fee Changes.
All right.
Yes, this is Paula.
Yes. Is yes your vote? I'm sorry.
Yes, my vote is a yes.
Thank you. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey? Yes. I'm a yes. Ms. Norton?
No.
Ms. Rubalcaba?
No.
And Ms. Turner? Ms. Turner? Cheryl?
I better abstain.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I apologize. I think I skipped item 7A, the licensing division report, and Ms. Brown will provide the report. My apologies.
Chair, did we want to continue with the Ledge Reg report? We do have two additional.
Oh, my apologies, Mr. Durking. Please finish your report.
The next item that we considered was the rulemaking for the pass rates for Title 16, Section 250.
Christ, I am never going to get out of here. I've listened to this boring, horribly boring garbage.
I'll unmute yourself.
Oh, we're sorry that this is horribly boring, but
Yeah, we got
you
some.
want to mute yourself.
Madam Chair, may I continue?
Please.
All right, thank you. The next item that we considered was the pass rate rulemaking for Title 16. Sections 2530 and 2585 is amended. I1, and new I2. We reported, we have the committee recommendation and possible action. At the Wednesday, July 8th committee meeting, the Ledge and Regs Committee also moved that the board authorize staff to initiate the regulations process for the modified Article 5 pass rate rulemaking language, something we did discuss as a board before. The committee was provided a thorough explanation of why the amended language of Article 5 has been greatly pared down. We hope you had a chance to take a look at the documents. These were called former pass rate proposed language for VN and PT, and pass rate only proposed language for vote, VN and PT. If you have any questions, please formulate them at this time, and we can begin the discussion. Ms. Yamaguchi, did you want to weigh in on this particular item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, of course. This topic has been discussed quite a number of times, actually, before I joined the board staff. As we talked about at great length today, there's a number of issues regarding the school's pass rates and using them, of course, as one of the many measures we have to assess how well the program is doing in their charged mission to educate students. In 2017 and 18, I believe staff and the board engaged in a number of community meetings where they got a lot of input from stakeholders. And one of the outcomes, I believe, was that there were a whole lot of recommendations, but we came up with a number of concrete ones. One being standardizing the pass rate level at that 75%, and the other being some work on the abbreviating that 8 quarters to 4 quarters. At this point, we also earlier in the year had anticipated doing a few other badly needed updates in our regs with regard to the faculty in schools. But in light of the fact that there's so much that needed to be done urgently, but that the pass rates itself was very, very urgent, that we advised the board via the committee that severing the other language out of our proposal and moving forward only with that pass rate language, and that 8 quarters to 4 quarters, pardon me. Essentially, we believe that that's going to provide us with a better short-term ability to work with the programs to be able to move forward. I think as a footnote, I want the board to know that even as we speak, our experts are applying really, really tight microscopes to all of our regs, but in particular Article 5 of both acts to look at the overall school faculty language. And we hope to move forward with that soon, that we would be able to provide concepts to the board on some of the areas we hope to work on. We should be able to provide concepts at the November meeting so that we could, if the board would approve them at that point, we would be able to place those on our rulemaking calendar in 2021. At this point, I'd like to pause for some questions, Mr. Chair.
Yes, absolutely.
I see Donna Norton has her hand up.
I believe Paula had her hand up first. I came after her.
All right. Ms. Amazola de Herrera, you have a comment or question?
No, I apologize. I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay, so then that would be to me. So this also came up in the Education Committee. And while I understand the issues, I believe related to the 8 quarters versus 4 quarters. And I do very much recall having discussions about the pass rates. I do not ever recall the board voting on changing from 8 quarters to 4. I went back and I viewed the board meeting from February 2020 YouTube video. And at the 1 hour, 59 minute mark, we discussed pass rates. But we did not discuss provisional after 1 year. That's where we introduced Clay Jackson. I also reviewed the May 2020, and we again discussed changing the pass rates, but we did not discuss changing from 8 quarters to 4 quarters. I have reviewed the minutes. I cannot find anything where we have actually had that discussion as a full board. And again, I'm not saying that I'm opposed to it. I just don't ever recall discussing it. I'm wondering if it was discussed possibly in the Executive Office Committee, but if we could open up a discussion about changing from 8 to 4, that would be helpful to me. It certainly makes sense to me. It does seem odd that we would allow a school to have 2 full years of inadequate pass rates before we can place them on provisional. That doesn't seem to make sense to me. What would seem to make more sense would be to place them on provisional sooner, and then give them the opportunity for coming off of it. As it was explained to me, and perhaps I misunderstood it, that the importance of changing to 4 quarters is that after 4 quarters, we would remove the school from the approved school list and essentially shut the school down. So if someone can explain those to me, and we can open a discussion for that, I would appreciate it.
I would defer to the executive officer for rationale and the basis for the 4 quarter versus 8 quarters.
Oh, before Elaine speaks, I just want to say one thing from an educational standpoint. We call that early intervention.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Much appreciated. First off, a point of order that the board did vote on that language specifically in May of 2020. It had been a long day, and so I do probably think that, Ms. Norton, you're probably correct. I beg your pardon. There was not a robust discussion of that point in particular. So at the pleasure of the board and the chair, if you do want to have a discussion on that policy, but I also do know that the Legend Regs Committee did discuss that specifically as well. The president is correct that the intent here is to be able to intervene sooner in the process, that we see schools able to correct problems sooner and improve sooner. Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you. I would also ask Carpenter to weigh in, a co-member of the Ledge Reg Committee. Do you have any comments?
Well, I was just going to comment earlier that as Ms. Amazola de Herrera had mentioned, some of these issues we've been discussing the entire time that she and I have both been on the board, and this is something that's been on our radar for some time.
I don't disagree that the pass rates have been on the radar for some time. But again, I do, and I gave you very specifics that I reviewed all the material and we have not discussed the moving from 8 quarters to 4 quarters. So can someone explain if there are, what does that mean? And yes, I understand that probably in Ledge Red Committee, this was heavily discussed. The problem is the YouTube video for the Ledge Red Committee was not sent to us, and the meeting minutes do not reflect what the discussion was. The meeting minutes just reflect that there was a discussion. So we are left here in the dark, but being asked to vote on this. And it is not about, and I agree with Ms. Carpenter and with Paula, we have been discussing it a long time, but if we're going to vote on something, we should know what we're voting on. And I'll just leave it there. So if you can please give me a summary of what it means to move from 8 quarters to 4 quarters so that I can make a decision.
Thank you, Ms. Norton. I would once again defer to Ms. Yamaguchi for some more background information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, again, this proposal was developed, as you know, over a course of years. The logic behind the move from 8 quarters to 4, I think actually the board members have seen a really good illustration of why earlier intervention and earlier movement with the schools, earlier work in the ability to correct any deficiencies is absolutely in actually California's best interest. We would help the schools, I think, immeasurably to correct any flaws and actually to see trends that are emerging much sooner, trends that would include curriculum or faculty issues or facility issues. Bluntly, of course, the issue with clinical facilities, that's just going to be a constant problem, and that changes so very, very quickly, especially now, that's not something that we're going to be able to provide any real long range projection on. But generally, as I said, this providing of that, as the president said, this early warning system, it's absolutely, I believe, in everybody's best interest. We're not looking to be punitive by any means. I think that, like as I said, our recommendation here is mostly to make sure that the NECs are working sooner, as I said, with the schools. There's a lot of different areas that schools have been having problems with before this year, before this absolutely insane year. But they seem to revolve a lot around pass rates. But the pass rates themselves are really just kind of an indicator of other structural issues with a school, generally speaking. And it does require an NEC a lot of time working really in depth with a program director to suss those out. Is it a curriculum issue? Is it a faculty issue? Is it parking lot? There's any number of things that are impacting the students. And essentially, I think the idea here is, as I said, to be able to address things more proactively. But as a footnote, though, I would point out that as we were discussing earlier today, truthfully, BVNPT at this point really does need to be starting to look forward and really, I think, assessing the future of LVN and PT curriculum in the schools, the preparatory programs. There's a lot of issues, I believe, that are contributing to really, really good nurses or not so good nurses. So as I said, there's a lot of work to do. I think providing schools with more, as I said, proactive consultation, again, benefits the schools as well as California. Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Very well said.
My hands up.
Questions?
Yes, Ms. Turner. So it sounds like we're having a tendency to mix up the issues of policy versus procedure. And so I don't think that anybody here is questioning whether or not we should intercede if the schools are not, meeting the proper standards. But the question is, are we following the proper procedure when we take action to correct or to intervene? That's all we're questioning. What was the procedure, and did we follow the proper procedure? So the issue of whether or not we actually voted for a change in the quarterly system, because I also recall that there were more quarters that we had voted on, and the next time we looked on it, there were less. And maybe the Ledge Reg committee voted on it, but I don't remember the board as a whole voting for it. And that's what we're talking about. Did we follow the proper procedure? As well as when we decide that we are not going to allow a school to add additional classes. Yes, we should be able, hopefully, to intervene if a school is not meeting the standards and prevent them from adding additional classes. But the question is, are we following the proper procedure when we try to take that action? Do we have authority or not? And that's all I think that we're questioning.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. This issue regarding the number of quarters was indeed discussed at the Ledge Reg Committee. As was represented at the time by staff, it does appear to be a tool for stronger and earlier intervention, as the board president indicated.
Okay, but did the board itself also vote on it, is the question.
I would defer to staff once again for the history of this matter for the
Moderator, is it possible for you to find the May minutes?
Yes.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
give me 1 minute.
This is Donna. I just want to say again, I reviewed the May 2020 YouTube video. And we discussed pass rates. We did not discuss changing from the quarters. And that's what was discussed when I got booted. I did get booted from that WebEx. When I got back on, Tammy was explaining. But when I reviewed it, she didn't mention a change to the quarters. So again, perhaps we could just have, instead of, since obviously a number of us don't recall having the discussion, could we just have the discussion now before we attempt to force ourselves to vote yes or no on something coming out of committee that clearly we are telling you that we haven't discussed? And due to the late hour, I'm not opposed to continuing on, but I think that this warrants a larger discussion. I think this warrants the time necessary to actually have the discussion with the full board. Because I'm not the only one that feels this way. Or again, you can take it to a vote and people can vote their conscience. Again, it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. And this is a larger question. I would really love to understand the entire package of provisional, because as evidenced by today, there is a lot that there is procedure, there is policy, there is history that we do not understand.
This is the moderator. The agenda item number 4A for the minute meetings for May 22nd, 2020 are on view now.
Just scroll to that page, please.
This is a moderator. Where would you like it at, Ms. Yamaguchi?
I believe it is item 9B3.
This is on view.
Now, granted that this is very terse and does not call out that specific piece of the package, but the attachment that had been appended to the board packet in May did actually have exactly this language. But to Ms. Turner and Ms. Norton's point, the board has several options here. One, we can defer this and have a more robust discussion in November. Two, we can go ahead and take a vote now because there has been some very good discussion actually in the past few minutes.
Or we could discuss the number of quarters issue to the satisfaction of the board members with remaining questions. I would prefer to.
That's a great option.
So this is Donna, and since I seem to be the one that's carrying all these objectionable things today, I would like to know, because you never know what you don't know until you find out you don't know it. For provisional approval, there's so much that's not written in there. So what is evidenced itself today? So a school that is new, as evidenced by our earlier school, they'd only been in business for 1 year, and we were placing them on provisional. And then our regulations say, and I think what we have been doing was, if they had 8 quarters of unsatisfactory pass rates, placing them on provisional. And then I believe they had 8 quarters to get better, and then if they didn't get better, then we would remove them from the approved list. Is that the understanding of most of the board members in summation of what we're saying here? And so if that is, then what you are suggesting is that we move from 8 quarters to place on provisional, and also to 4 quarters, and also to move from 8 quarters to remove from provisional to 4 quarters? Is that the package that the Reg Committee discussed? And then if someone please speak to how long does a school have from the time that they started? When can they be expected to be placed on provisional if they don't have adequate pass rates, or does it not matter?
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry. You go ahead,
Mr. Chair, may I address that, please?
please.
First of all, Ms. Norton, the processes for approving and moving a new school along is different from that of placing an existing school, a long-time existing school on provisional. When a school is new, and I expect to be corrected at any minute now, they are given one class. Based on the success of that class, there's a second class assigned to them. Based on the combined pass rates and other analyses of those two classes, then a program is accorded a third class. Based on the cumulative successes of those three classes, a program may then apply for continued approval. And they generally will set forth a standard enrollment pattern of, one class every year, one class every 6 months, et cetera, a day class and a night class. So generally speaking, that process is different. And so this 8-quarter to 4-quarter matter does not apply. Now, what this does apply to is that work with the schools who have been experiencing some difficulties and possibly showing some violations. That is the subject of this discussion, whereby while we've been looking at waiting and looking at 8 consecutive quarters and the success rates or other factors for those 8 consecutive quarters, we have found over the past years that this allows some schools to develop much more serious problems than could have been addressed much more soon and much more proactively and much more effectively. So summing up, again, this is one of those questions of not so much expedience, but efficiency, really. So that, again, the idea here is that the NECs need to work more collaboratively and more proactively with the programs before there's a problem. And only by having this shorter timeline can we avoid having a really significant problem that, I know that the board members have seen some really horrific examples for over the past year or two or more, really. Ms. Norton, did that answer part of your question at least?
Yes, that was extremely helpful. And I would have remembered had we had that conversation before. My question now would be, so placing on provisional causes these schools to have to notify and have a certificate and all of that. So that's the act of being placed on provisional. Is it possible to have early intervention? Because I agree, why would we want to wait 8 quarters? Is there a way to do early intervention with these schools that would not require a regulatory change? Because if I'm understanding, because this is tied to our regulations, and because the regulations are specific, that it's 8 quarters, we're attempting to change our regulations. That's why the Ledge Committee is seeking legislation for this, correct?
That is correct, and that's yes. And the short answer to your question is there already is that early intervention because the NECs are looking at the programs are assigned to every quarter, and they're able to ask questions. They're able to say, "Hey, what's going on with this? I saw this dip." They're able to work very, very collaboratively now. The difference here with this regulatory language is actually to take that official action, not that unofficial action that happens most of the time.
Thank you again, very helpful. And is it the opinion of the NECs that 4 quarters is adequate time to both do an early intervention and see progress, that 4 quarters is enough, because at the end of the 4 quarters, they either, I guess at the end of 4 quarters, the recommendation could be to extend provisional or to remove them from the approved list of schools, correct? There's nothing saying that at the end of 4 quarters, you must remove them.
Donna, I'm not an NEC, but as a director of a program, we review every quarter we review our pass rates, and we go back to documents that are provided by a company called Mountain Measurements, where we can review and track what topics the students had more difficulty with. We can compare what happened, the pass rates from one quarter to another quarter, and these documents are put out every 6 months, and you can trace and see what's going on in your program. And that's part of what the NECs could do with this early intervention. They can recommend that these schools start utilizing, they're called Mountain Measurements, not after me, but they are really helpful in tracking how your program is doing with NCLEX, and then tying that back to your curriculum, and having early intervention for schools that don't have that on their radar. It would save them money. It would assist them in continuing to put out good nurses. I guess for me, I just see it as a win all the way around.
Thank you. Again, very helpful, and they should probably name it after you. Mountain Measures, I like that. Is there it would be hilarious. Is there public support for this, or would it be now time to open for public comment? Or, I mean, I know Ms. Turner had some questions related to this too, but thank you. This was a very helpful discussion. I do understand it much better now, and I'm assuming that the NECs believe that 4 quarters is enough time to turn the school around. Or should be. So thank you.
Ms. Norton, absolutely. The NECs believe that this is a very good time frame. And to your point about public conversation, remember that this is moving forward in the regulatory process, which means it'll be open for public comment in general, quite widely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yamaguchi. If there's nothing further, we have a motion from the Ledge Reg Committee. Madam President, may I proceed?
Please.
Thank you. The Legislative and Regulations Committee moves that the board authorize the staff or the executive officer to sever the rulemaking of general requirements and faculty qualifications at Title 16, Division 25, Chapters 1 and 2, and Articles 5 of each chapter, Sections 2529 and 2530, for vocational nurses, amending only L and L1 and adding L2 and only Title 16, Division 25, Chapter 2. Article 5, Section 2585 for psychiatric technicians, amending only L and L1 and adding L2 as reflected in the proposed language received in the meeting packet. That's our motion, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Durking. I would like to see if there's any public comment. I see no hands raised for the board. Moderator, is there any public comment?
This is the moderator. There is no public comment at this time.
Seeing no hands raised, I would like to call for a vote. Ms. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Rubikova?
Yes.
Ms. Norton?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. Maxey?
Yeah.
Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
I believe she may have left the meeting, Madam.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Mr. Durking, is there anything further from the Reg Committee?
I am happy to say that concludes our report.
Thank you so much. I apologize. I skipped 7A, and I apologize to that committee. Can we go back and do item 7A, licensing division report, and Ms. Brown will provide the report.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The licensing division report was included in your packet, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
See no hands raised. I'm looking again. Moderator, are there any hands raised in the public?
There are none.
Seeing no hands raised, is there any other comments from the board? Thank you, Ms. Brown. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I believe our last item is 9A, the Enforcement Division, and Ms. Woods will provide this report.
Hello. Congratulations to Carol and John. I would like to say I'm excited to be here. So my name is Antoinette Wood. I am the new enforcement chief. I'll give you a quick background on me. So I came from Caltrans with the Office of Civil Rights, and prior to that I worked for Community Care Licensing, where I was a licensing program manager, the technical support analyst, and I also worked as a licensing program analyst. What we did at Community Care Licensing was license, inspect, and conduct complaint investigations on homes for the developmentally delayed, mentally ill, elderly. For children's residential, we did foster care and group homes. So that's my background. I also have a master's in criminal justice. And this is week 3 for me, so if I don't know something, please, please give me a little bit of leeway. So you have the Enforcement Division report. Does anyone have any questions?
Madam President, I just have one question regarding this report.
Go ahead, Mr. Durking.
How are we doing regarding CPEI compliance, and do our current number of days for completion of a case, are we seeing a downward trajectory?
Hi, this is Antoinette. So it is hard to say because COVID has interrupted some things. We definitely see our complaints coming in have gone down due to COVID. We are working on our backlog very diligently, and we hope to have more information for the report for the board as we see more of what COVID has really done to us.
Thank you for that. Are there other questions? And moderator, do we have any questions in the public?
This is the moderator. There are no public comments at this time.
Seeing no public comments and no comments from the board, thank you for your report, Ms. Woods. And we'll move on to the next section of our report. Item 10 is the board calendar. Ms. Yamaguchi, do you have information on this for us?
Madam Chair, yes, indeed. At this point in time, we would need the board to vote on the logistics for at least the November meeting, and I would recommend the February meeting as well. I think you have all seen that under the circumstances, we do not anticipate the ability to have a public and certainly not an away meeting in November. And the department has also advised me that most other entities are planning to meet via WebEx or Teams all the way through the spring of 2021. So at this point, I would strongly recommend that the board plan to have its November and its February board meetings via WebEx. And I'd be happy to answer questions or comments.
Yeah, I have a comment. I meant to compliment you all in adding the petitioner and their attorney, if they have one, to the WebEx. So I know that that's an improvement. Just wanted to say that. And obviously, November, we have to prepare for to continue with WebEx for our next meeting, unless something drastically changes.
Ms. Turner, that was going to be my second question to put before the board after you vote on whether or not to stay on WebEx for the next two board meetings. But I appreciate the comment.
All right, I see no further. Oh, I do see a hand. Ms. Turner, your hand is still up. You have more comments? Thank you. Seeing no other hands, do we, Mr. Swenson, do we need a motion for this?
You do, Madam Chair.
Yeah,
Okay.
since the board previously acted through a motion to approve the meeting schedule, it would have to have a new motion to change the meeting schedule.
Can we have a motion to change the meeting schedule?
This is Donna.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, are we changing the meeting schedule? Or we're just changing the venue, right? So we're just going to have the meeting via WebEx, but it would be the same dates, or are we changing the schedule, the dated schedule as well?
When the meetings were scheduled by motion, it also included location. And so it came to the issue of scheduling. That's why I presented it that way. But the motion would be to change the location from the live locations to WebEx.
Thank you. So I'll move that we change the November and February board meetings from live locations to WebEx.
Is there any board discussion on this?
Yes, this is Alita. Would we still have the additional Wednesday added to our November board meeting?
Madam Chairman,
Ms. Yamaguchi, that would be.
Thank you. Ms. Carpenter, that's a terrific question. It's one we had discussed among the staff. At this point in time, I would say no, we would not. But I did want to bring that up with the executive committee. And if we do, we would certainly move as quickly as we possibly could to send out the schedule. But I would suggest that we not.
Thank you.
Are we just voting on Thursday and Friday at this point, though?
I believe so, Madam.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
This is Donna. I made the motion. I think we just need a second.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
This is Alita. I'll second it.
All right. Is there any other comments from the boards? And moderator, do we have any comments from the public? Are there any comments from the public? Moderator?
This is the moderator. I do not see any public comments at this time.
I see no hands raised from the board members. I'd like to take a roll call vote. And Ms. Amazola de Herrera is gone. Ms. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Durking,
Yes.
Mr. Maxey. Is Mr. Maxey gone as well?
Looks like this is the moderator. Looks like Mr. Maxey has dropped from the meeting. Let me see if he has logged back in.
I'm a yes. Ms. Norton?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Kulalabra?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Turner?
Yes.
So that will pass. All right, so we will be meeting by WebEx. Item 11 is, are there any public?
Madam
Oh,
Chair,
yes,
if I
ma'am.
may. There was a second part to that. First off, I hope the board felt that yesterday's petitioner hearings, one case notwithstanding, went well via WebEx. I thought that it was a very, very well-structured meeting and session. So that does bring up the question of if the board wishes to proceed exactly the same for November and possibly February, or if the board would like to discuss any other small modifications. There are a couple of ways to do this. Of course, you did just vote to only meet for 2 days in November, but if you want to meet for, say, 3 days in February and do 2 days of hearings, that would be one thing. If the board wished the staff to look through the docket and find things that are very, very simple and non-controversial, like petitions to end probation early, things like that, that we could possibly refer directly to the Attorney General's office. I would suggest that the executive committee discuss that as soon as we can put a meeting together. But I think for the time being, though, I would feel comfortable if the board want to move to continue the WebEx hearings, but to limit it to 5 petitions for November. Madam Chair?
So we need a movement, we need a proposal for that, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And discussion, I thought I saw a hand go up. Ms. Norton, you have your hand raised.
Yes. So my only concern with, if we refer it to the AG, does it not cost us? In light of all the discussion that we had earlier with the state of the fund solvency, would it be prudent to refer reinstatements to the AG? Is my question. Because I think that's what you were referring to.
Ms. Norton, that's a great question. My understanding is that while there would be some cost, it would also be offset by the fact that we would not be absorbing the cost for the ALJ and the DAG to be at a hearing with us.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, but
Ms.
wouldn't the
Turner?
ALJ, yes, wouldn't the ALJ and the DAG already be with us?
Yes, what I'm saying is, let me clarify that. I probably didn't do that very well. Right. We would absolutely still have an ALJ and a DAG for any hearings that the board conducted itself. But by deferring them over to the Attorney General's office directly, it somewhat abbreviates the time. So, as I said, it would balance out. I don't think there'd be a savings, but I also don't think there would be an added cost.
Okay, well, we're already billing by the hour for per diem, so you say, I'm sure it's cheaper for us to hear it than it is for the AG's office to hear it. since ours come out to about $11 an hour or less, and then they charge, I don't know what they charge. They charge $200 or $300 an hour by now. I don't know. It's cheaper for us to hear it, and it's within our jurisdiction to hear it. And so I don't see why we should continue to transfer our duties to others. As I said before, if we keep doing that, they can just go ahead and sunset us. Or turn us over to DCA, and then they don't need a board.
Okay, I think the question is, do we want to keep the same format that we had during this meeting? Is that correct?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that is the question. And if I could elaborate just a little bit, you're absolutely correct that the added movement would incur, of course, an extra cost. But as I said, I believe it balances out. And but you know, as I said, Ms. Turner, I think the board has a number of other options. One being that we could convene for 2 days, and so 5 petitioners each of those days. We could. There's a number of ways we can configure this, and as I said, my recommendation would be to ask the executive committee to discuss this at some length and make a recommendation to the board in November, but to keep the November calendar at those 2 days with 5 hearings on the Thursday in November.
Yes, because the third day was usually historically for training purposes. Other activities of the board had nothing to do with hearing petitions. So.
I see that Ms. Carpenter has her hand up.
I just wanted to comment that I thought that the format for yesterday went very well, and I would prefer to be able to see the petitioners ourselves.
Do we have a motion about the format of the meetings?
This is Donna. I'll move that we have the same format that we used for yesterday's meetings. And I didn't think that yesterday's meeting went long if we took out the closed session, the added closed session that we had to take. So I don't know that we have to limit the number of, I don't know that it's necessary to limit the number of cases.
So you're going to go ahead and keep the same format. Do we have a second on that?
On Durkin.
Alita Carpenter, I'll second.
All right. Do we have any comment from the public or any further comment from the board? I see no raised hands. Moderator?
There are no public comments.
Let's have a roll call vote. Ms. Carpenter?
Actually, Madam Chair, before you take the vote, may I please clarify that the motion actually was to proceed with the hearings as done yesterday, but not to limit it to 5, to go back to the docket of 8 that the board has traditionally held?
Excuse me. How does the rest of the board feel about that?
8 may be too many.
I'm in agreement with that. I think that holding it to 5 is probably a good idea, just because we've had so many technical issues. Other comments?
We didn't have 8 yesterday, did we?
No, we had 5.
Okay, so let me amend. I meant that to hold it to my motion, and apparently I wasn't clear with it enough, would be to have the same format as yesterday. I thought that you were trying to further limit the number of cases from yesterday, which is why I said we wouldn't need to. So no, yes. So the motion would be to have the same format as yesterday.
Thank you. And Ms. Carpenter, are you still a second on that?
Oh, yes.
All right. And Ms. Carpenter, how do you vote?
Oh, I vote yes.
And Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey? He's got technical issues. I will vote yes. Ms. Norton?
Yes.
Ms. Rubikova?
Yes.
And Ms. Turner?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's see. Item 11 is any public comment on items not on the agenda. Moderator, do we see any hands raised for public comments not on the agenda?
This is the moderator. There are no public comments at this time.
Thank you so much. Item 12 is suggestions for future agenda items. Board members, does anyone have any suggestions for future agenda items? Can you please raise your hand? Ms. Turner?
Okay, so this is not exactly on point, but I think that Mr. Maxey was supposed to be making a report since he's chair of the enforcement committee, and we didn't ask him if he had a report. So just for the future, make sure we give everyone a chance to be heard. I know.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. That's very good. That's a very good suggestion. I apologize if I didn't ask Mr. Maxey for his report.
Madam Chair, just by way of background, Mr. Maxey didn't have a report as the committee was not able to meet.
Okay. He can say that though, right? He can say meet, and then next he can go.
Right. Are there any public comments or any further comments?
This is the moderator. There are no public comments at this time.
Item 13 is adjournment. I adjourn this meeting at 5:45.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for all being here.
Thank you, Carol. You did an amazing job. You had a very rough first initiation.
Thank you. It's all you guys. You're wonderful.
Great job, Carol.
This is the moderator. Thank you all for participating. I'm going to close the meeting now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki.
You're welcome.
Bye, Vicki. Bye, everyone.
Bye.